Okay, well, welcome everyone to Meet the New Guide, Part 1. We are recording now, and I am, of course, Mark Lefebvre. I think almost everybody knows me, and my co-pilots today, Kelly Reynolds and Elena Takaki. Elena will be logging back in just a moment, as you probably heard. So we may have some polls for you in just a moment, but I know that that many of you have not yet seen the guide, have not accessed the guide. If you put in a bulk order early in the month, you probably have, but the individual orders are going to take a bit more time, and especially for the folks in the Northeast. I know you have some bad weather there that may delay it further, but I think that you'll find the webinar today to be helpful even without the guide in your hands. And I'll of course have pictures of pages, and you can take notes and access this recording later as well.
Okay.
So you should see the screen that I'm hoping we're all looking at is the title screen, Meet the New Wild Guide.
Hey, Mark.
Kelly, go ahead.
I think that you're not sharing your screen currently. We just see the different users.
Okay.
Yes, there it is.
Okay. So you should see that the first screen, Meet the New Wild Guide. I also want to do a quick check on the audio. Can folks hear me all right? And if you want to respond in your chat box, go for it. And Kelly and Elena are going to help monitor the chatting. So everything's good? Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So today our goals are for you to become familiar, really for Project Wild coordinators to become more familiar with updated content, the virtual guide, and also to help you prepare to incorporate the content into your facilitator and educator trainings. Before I say any more though, I want to say thank you. Thank you all very much. It's been a long haul, and so many of you put in a lot of time to making this update possible. Starting back really with Aquatic Wild and all of the planning, reviews and more reviews and edits, helping us fundraise. So we really appreciate it. Thank you very much. All right. So today, in the second session on April 12th, if you're able to join us, these are our objectives, and these will dovetail with what we're also going to be doing in Ohio for the Project Wild Coordinators Conference. Our objective today for Meet the Guide, or Meet the New Guide, for this two-part session is first to describe each of 6 new activities. So my hope is that you'll be able to give anyone a quick overview of those 6 activities if you're not yet familiar with them. Second is to be able to summarize most of the major points of what is new about the Project Wild Guide, what the new content is. Third, to be able to describe updated activities and to be able to compare the new version of activities to previous versions. That third objective probably will happen more in the next Part 2 webinar on April 12th. The fourth objective is for you to be able to locate and describe some of the online resources with In Step with STEM, Wildwork, and additional activity resources. That's a little tricky because a lot of that online content isn't yet available. We're working on it. We have a start on it, and some of it we have formatted in a way that we can actually start using today, but you'll get an idea of what that looks like. The Association of Fish and Wildlife Agencies just launched a new website, and we're working on the switch of the Project Wild website to that larger website. So for us, it's a very big process, and the In Step with STEM, the Wildwork, and the additional activity resources that will be online are part of that larger process. It will take some time, but we hope to have something up very soon that anyone using the Project Wild Guide can use as those supplemental online resources. The fifth objective is to begin to develop and discuss strategies for how to incorporate new content into your Project Wild professional development training. And we're hopefully going to touch on that or start that conversation today continue it next time, and also in Ohio for those of you who are able to attend the Coordinators, the Project Wild Conference. Okay, so let's see. I'm hearing some music. I'm going to see if I can mute everyone. Okay, I think that did it. So I think an important question for you to think about is in your conversations with facilitators and educators is, how would you describe the new Project Wild Guide? And in simplest terms, I would say this new edition, the 4th edition of Project Wild Terrestrial, includes expanded and updated educational methodology and environmental topics. Okay, so methodology and topics. That's in very basic terms what is new. But I've broken it down into 8 easy answers for what's new. And in this next slide, you'll see the first 4. So first of all, we have 6 new activities. And I'm going to be referring to some more notes I have. With those 6 new activities, there's more of a focus on the ecology and conservation of bees, bats, reptiles, and monarch butterflies, as well as stewardship activities relating to changing phonologies and the reduction of light pollution. The second part of what's new is a greater diversity of topics. And that involves non-native species, climate literacy, wildlife diseases, human energy use, agriculture, sustainable systems, and a few activities involving geospatial technology. So GIS, for example, and we'll get more on that later. Third is a greater diversity of species. Not only mammals and megafauna, but insects, reptiles, amphibians, more on birds, more on pollinators, and yes, including game species and non-game species. Okay, Mary, I'm going to have to give you a hard time now because I keep muting you, but your music keeps coming back. And I just muted you, so you might have trouble commenting. All right. Number 5, and what's new? Outdoor components. So as most of you will recall, the part of that is every activity has some kind of outdoor component in it. And that might be as simple as an outdoor suggestion and an extension for those activities that happen primarily indoors. But we wanted to make sure that every single activity had something with guidelines or ideas, extensions for going outside. Number 6, wild work. Every activity has this career or occupation extension, and they almost all of them link to online resources, videos, profiles, and more ideas about exploring occupations in wildlife conservation and management. Number 7, in step with STEM. Every activity, all 81 activities in Project Wild, as well as all the activities in Aquatic Wild, now have in step with STEM. These are, of course, STEM extensions for more ideas about science, technology, engineering, and math. And then number 8, 16 field investigations. So a lot of these field investigations are not new, but they all have new content. Some of the new activities are also field investigations. All of these 16 activities are clearly marked as field investigations, and that is, they all involve students going outside to collect data in a local environment to answer a question. And that's how Project Wild defines field investigation. Students going outside to collect data in their local outdoor environment to answer questions. Of those 16 field investigations, we've expanded 4 of them into that more extensive model that corresponds with the model that was developed by AFWA and the Pacific Education Institute some years back as part of the Conservation Education Toolkit. Okay. I have a handout that you will soon receive. It's already uploaded to the Coordinators Corner, if I understand correctly. Is that right, Kelly? And thank
Correct.
you again. So you probably have a blurry version of it on your screen now, but it's a handout, Meet the New Project Wild K-12 Curriculum and Activity Guide, and it just highlights and bullets each of those pieces. And you're welcome to use this, for yourself or give it to others, hand it out at conferences, and it's available online at the Coordinators Corner. Okay, now what I'm showing you now is a key. This is the key to help you navigate through some of the changes. This is also a document you will have access to. And you can see that it's broken up, color-coded by how much activities changed. And it's in some cases somewhat arbitrary, because one activity we might classify as a keep as is activity with relatively little change, but really all of those activities, those 10 activities at the top of the list, all had changes. And most of them had changes in background and procedures, sometimes mild changes, but every activity has been updated. The activities in the light green are activities that had more involved updates. There's 49 of those, and some of those had title changes. So you can see there's two columns, the previous title on the left and the new title on the right. So for example, hazardous links, possible solutions became a dire diet. Habitat lapsit became habitat circles. Grasshopper gravity became insect inspection. Habitrax became map that habitat. Sometimes those title changes also correspond with major content changes. Other times it was, this activity just needs a new title because for some reason that title is just not working. A few others worthy of noting: Flip the Switch for Wildlife is now the power of planning. Energy pipeline is trophic transfer. And I'm thirsty is now water mileage. There's a few others I didn't name. Again, you'll have this handout. The activities in orange, these are activities that were combined. We did 6 activities and reworked them into 16 activities. The new titles are in the right column. Sometimes those titles are the same as a previous anchoring activity or one that we base the new version on. Kelly will speak more to that later. The activities in pink are those that are no longer in print. Note that I did not say deleted, although that's how we have been referring to those activities. But as you may recall, those activities will be available to Project Wild coordinators as PDF downloads through the Coordinators Corner. And if you continue to use those activities, I would love to hear about it. We're not quite sure what the future of those activities are, but I think that that there's still some great activities there, and they weren't taken out of the guide because they weren't good activities. They were taken out of the guide, out of the printed guide, because we were making room for content that we thought would be used more. All right, and then finally, the final category in green are the new activities, and there's 6 of those. All right, let's talk more about the 6 new activities. Here is another table, and again, this is one that you will have access to, so you don't have to memorize it. But a quick reference for what those grade levels are. We're dealing with 4 grade level tiers now, and that's in contrast to the 3 grade level tiers that we had in the previous versions. So now we have lower elementary and upper elementary. We have middle school and we have high school. These are the same grade classifications that we use in Aquatic Wild. So now Aquatic Wild and the expanded terrestrial guide use the same system for categorizing the grades. And in almost every activity, they match for multiple grade levels or multiple categories. In some cases, they're just within 1 grade category, like the activity Keeping Cool, which is a new activity. It's for upper elementary, so it's for grades 3, 4, and 5. But in most cases, they span grades, sometimes from 3rd grade through 12th grade, in the case with the new activity Lights Out. Deciding on these grade level classifications is always going to be tricky because Lights Out is a good example of an activity that would work for some 5th grade classrooms, possibly with modifications some 4th grade classrooms, and there's guidelines in the activity for how to do that, but probably not for 3rd grade classrooms. So you do have to use those grade level suggestions with some discretion. As you will see on the new activity chart, we also have a quick reference to the subject areas as well as these descriptions. And a new feature of the guide are activity descriptions that will be available in the back of the guide as part of the alphabetical listing of activities. So this is a quick reference not only to what page you can find each activity on, but a real quick synopsis or description of what's going on in that activity. Okay, moving on. And let's see, I don't know if Elena is back with us. I'm scanning now to see. Okay, and Elena was going to see if she could launch one of the polls that I had created earlier. And if you can, now would be the time to launch poll number 2.
I can't. I don't have access to it.
All right, I had a little pop quiz for you. And we might come back to it another time, maybe in session 2. It's about the new activities. So, okay, here's a look at Phonology at Play. This is the first page of this new activity. And my purpose for showing this to you is so you can start to become familiar with the format of how these activities are laid out. If you are a user of Aquatic Wild, then you'll already recognize this. If you're not, you will also want to take a good look at these pages in the front of the guide. So this is a 2-page spread that is in the new version of the expanded terrestrial guide, as well as a similar version in Aquatic Wild. And it's with its feature that we think will be useful to better help equip educators as they're adjusting to the new format. I think it'll help them use activities more efficiently as they're preparing to conduct activities. And I think also if you cover this in professional development, your trainings will be more effective. It'll help people digest this new content faster. So this is an overview of what the front page. On the left side of this page, there's what we call the sidebar, and it's broken down, as you can see, into all of that reference information about the activity. Some of the names of those reference sections have changed. So for example, we now call keywords terms to know. One part of that is the conceptual framework topic reference, which has always been somewhat of a mystery to many Project Wild users, how those codes correspond to the conceptual framework outline in the back of the guide. Those codes are very useful to us and to many coordinators and facilitators. And if someone wants to learn more about how to use those codes, they will now have to go online to the Project Wild website to get the full list of codes. But if they want to know more about the basic conceptual framework of Project Wild, they can simply go to the table of contents and see how the concepts of in each area, for example, in ecological knowledge, section 1, how that's broken up into different parts and to different topics of ecological knowledge. Okay. On the right side of this, this activity format page, you can see that it's broken down into the opening statement, which is a phrase, a one-line introduction that's designed to capture people's attention, to help get them curious to learn more about the activity, and to help them remember the activity once they've become familiar with it. Every activity has objectives that are, we hope, well-crafted learning objectives that formal educators are well accustomed to. Every activity has background designed for even the non-expert, I guess we could say. The background in most every activity has been updated. Procedures, you're familiar with those. I will say that, as you will see here, we also included some bullets under procedures, and these refer to those subset of field investigations that we call the expanded field investigations. Those 4 activities have their own special activity format, and so those are listed here. Okay, I'm going to move on. Oh, before I do, you'll see that instead of saying evaluation, we're now saying assessment. Okay, so this is a brand new feature in the terrestrial guide. We have not yet made it up to aquatic one, but we felt it was more accurate to call the assessment portion of the activity assessment rather than evaluation. Okay. That was part of the new front matter. There are other new parts of the front matter you will want to explore when you get your hands on the guide if you haven't already. But looking at the back matter now, that is the appendices, we have redeveloped some of those, and one of those is the content on climate change. Now it's titled Effective Climate Change Education. And I wanted to give you a little more information on that. You can read the text later, but basically, Ofwa's approach reflects how many agencies are communicating about climate change now. And that's really to move past what has historically been areas of controversy or the causes of climate change, but really to focus on adaptation and mitigation. That is, how can we best prepare to adapt to climate change, and how can we conserve wildlife resources on a landscape scale? There are many new climate change connections throughout the guide. Some of them are obvious in activities like phonology at play, and others are built into some new extensions or in step with STEM extensions. This is one of the updated appendices, and that is on simulations. There's, in the past, there have been several discussions at Project Wild conferences about the importance of debriefing after an activity. And many Project Wild activities are simulations. That is, they're activities that model aspects of the real world, such as natural systems and the ecosystem, to help learners better understand those systems. And we feel that this page is an important part of preparing educators, or especially reminding those that already know, to be sure to debrief after conducting those activities that are simulations, and to discuss with learners how is the activity like what is real and how is it different. We've also included a list of some of those activities that are simulations. The photo here at the bottom, and thank you again, Texas Parks and Wildlife, probably my favorite Project Wild photo. I think says a lot about what makes so many Project Wild simulations such great learning experiences. And that is those movement out of your seat activities that engage all your senses and that are fun. Really amazing opportunities for learning. And in this case, it's muskox maneuvers in this photo. And muskox maneuvers is a good example of an activity that was updated for the purpose of making the simulation a better reflection of reality. There was too much discrepancy between how muskoxen and other related species behave. That is that behavioral adaptation, that defense mechanism when under attack of circling up. In the previous version, the cows had a different role than the bulls. And it was agreed after some folks pointed out to us that that's not always the case, and with muskoxen that's not clear. So we've changed the procedures and the background primarily for that reason. Okay. Updated activities. I'm going to now, I think this is Kelly, when I turn it over to you. Before I do, I want to pause for a moment to see if there's any questions about new activities or those 8 major areas of change. And if you want to type in questions, or Elena or Kelly, if you see any questions you would like to bring up now, feel free.
Kiki had brought up the question about, do the new topics fit into the existing conceptual framework? So do you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yes, the answer is simply yes, they do. So every activity, including all of the new content, was reassessed to look at how they fit in and where they fit in. We considered adding new concepts, or really principles, into the conceptual framework. We did not, but we did make new connections in cases where some of them were somewhat weak. We considered, for example, adding new principles relating to climate change, but rather than doing that, we worked upon the principles that were already built into what I consider a fairly extensive conceptual framework. Okay, others? All right, Kelly, would you like to talk about updated activities? And
yeah.
if you need me to advance the slides, just holler.
I think I got it.
Okay.
Okay, so Mark mentioned some of the categories earlier in that key that you saw with the different colored table. So we have new activities, activities that were basically kept as is, although as he mentioned, every activity is updated in some capacity, no longer in print activities, and then we have updated and combined activities. So for new and kept as is and no longer in print, those are kind of self-explanatory, but I want to talk a little bit about the updated and combined activities. So, let's see if I can advance. What do you mean updated? That could mean a lot of different things. So, so I want to look at one activity together in particular, seed need, an activity that I know a lot of you have done in workshops. On the left, I put an image of the activity in the previously published version, and then on the right is the new version of the activity. So you can see just at first glance, obviously it's more colorful. A lot of those changes that you're familiar with already from Aquatic Wild, you can see here for the terrestrial version. We also have this field investigation icon that's on every activity that is a field investigation, like Mark mentioned. So that is something that's nice that wasn't in the previous guide, is that you can quickly glance and see and know that this is a field investigation. In the back, you used to be able to tell because of the skills index had a check mark by the activity. You can still reference the back as well as the front matter with the section on field investigations. So you can tell right off the bat the background is a lot longer. I'll skip to the next page and yeah. Whoa, went too far ahead. Okay, so the background is a lot more extensive. The activity before was 2 pages, whereas now it's about 6 pages. So that was another thing when we talk about the guide. For a long time we were talking about the expansion of the guide. And then that can be a little misleading in a sense because the Project Wild Guide used to have 123 activities, but now it has 81 activities. So it's fewer activities, but there's a lot more depth to each activity. The procedures, It used to be the activity was kind of just involved putting the sock on your foot and going out and collecting seeds that way. But now there are two parts to the procedures. One is where students collect seeds in part with a sock, but also just going outside and collecting different types of seeds. And then the second part of the procedure is what we've taken from Growing Up Wild, which has the eggs where you do the seed dispersal and you talk about different animals dispersing seeds. And there is also, if I can advance. So there's part 2. There's more extensions. As you can see, we've got 6 extensions now where there used to be 2. There's more photos in the guide, like that's similar to Aquatic Wild. And then here's this investigation sheet that accompanies the activity so that when they're looking at different seeds and talking about dispersal, they can categorize them. Okay, so not every updated activity is alike, kind of like in Growing Up Wild when we talk about grow as we go. Some have metamorphosed completely, others not as extensively, and then some are very similar. They've got the same basic parts, but they have changed. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about combined activities, and I have a picture of a liger here. Combined activities are kind of a subset of updated activities. And so basically, when you, our coordinators, were looking through them and we were having this conversation a few years ago about which ones do we want to keep, which ones do we want to change, we had this this category of combined activities where we saw certain similarities in topics, and we said, okay, we can condense that down and make space for other things like Mark mentioned. So with the combined activities, kind of like with complete dominance or partial dominance, you can kind of see the parent activity more clearly in the combined activity. Well, I guess as I phrased it here, some activities look more like one parent than the other. So I'll give you a couple of examples. The activity Fabled Fauna is really what you might think of with combined. We put them together. Oh, somebody's drawing on my screen. Did I do that?
I think those were your previous lines that.
Okay. So Fabled Fauna, it is a combination of And the Wolf Wore Shoes and Saturday Morning Wildlife Watching. And the Wolf Wore Shoes was more about printed material, looking at books and talking about real versus imaginary when it comes to animals. And Saturday Morning Wildlife Watching dealt with looking at cartoons, so videos, and talking about how different representations of animals can impact our perceptions of them. So Fabled Fauna really kind of puts the two together in the objectives, in the background, in the procedures. It deals with both print and cartoons. It talks about both types of objectives, looking at real versus imaginary, as well as how those representations impact our perceptions of wildlife. Okay. Carrying capacity is an example where if you look at the activity, it's called carrying capacity. It looks a lot like the currently published version of carrying capacity, but this was designated as a combination of carrying capacity, classroom carrying capacity, and Too Close for Comfort, as you can see. So as we worked on this activity, we realized that it was kind of hard to sometimes put a bunch of procedures together without making this kind of big cumbersome activity. So in some cases, we just made the procedures an extension of an activity. So we'll advance. So you can see this is on a page in the currently published Carrying Capacity, the new edition, where there's an extension that captures some of the activities in Too Close for Comfort and classroom carrying capacity. Okay, so I'm going to relinquish control and stop scribbling.
And Elena, are you with us?
Yep, I'm here. I don't know what happened to my slide, but
Okay, I'm putting it back. I was seeing if I could get rid of the doodles.
oh, that's all right.
Sorry.
Okay, well, at this point, we're turning it over to everyone that's on the line. And the question is, what is your plan? How do you plan, or what strategies or resources do you plan to use to help train your facilitators or to help get people familiar with the new guide? So if you already have a plan in place, you already have something going on, we'd love to hear from you. The best way to do that, probably we have over 40 people on the line right now. So probably the best way to do that is maybe type in the chat box if you're willing to share. And then we can call on someone to unmute themselves. Because if we unmute 40 people, it'll be really noisy. So, do we have a volunteer? Anyone willing to share their plans for getting out the new guide? I know some folks already have some training scheduled.
Erica says, Missouri has plans to do our own webinar for our established Wild Facilitator Network to reinvigorate our facilitators and share the updates with the new guide.
Okay, well, Erica, do you want to unmute yourself and tell us a little bit more about that in Missouri?
It took me a minute to unmute myself. I'm sorry.
That's fine.
Well, honestly, I've pretty much told all that I know at this point in time. I'm at the university, and I know that we need to work with the university in terms of trying to set up a webinar platform. I'm sure we'll probably have to use something that we have here, although I've worked with Zoom and GoToMeeting in much of my other work, but I'm not sure what the university uses. We have plans to do this summer, so we're looking at June. And our mission is twofold. Missouri's been a bit inactive with WILD for the last 3 years, and we have older facilitators, experienced facilitators who want to do WILD again, but of course need the updates. And we also have a group of facilitators that have been trained for flying WILD, but not for terrestrial WILD. And so, in terms of facilitation, there's a lot of similarities in the programs in terms of what the facilitator does for a workshop. So we'll have to share some of those pieces as well, some of the nuts and bolts about, the expectations that we have as coordinators, Janice Green and I, for our facilitators. So ours is a bit twofold, but it's perfect timing because the new guide is now available, and I know that everyone's going to be excited about that. It looks really great. I've used WILD for years, and I'm super excited about this. Thank you.
All right, Erica, thanks for sharing. Carrie Wickstead, you said you're also planning to have a workshop in April as a refresher. Do you want to tell us a little bit more about that?
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes.
Hey, all right. I've never used my microphone on this. So I'm just doing a one-day refresher workshop with some of the facilitators. It's optional, but essentially we're going to go through some of the activities and talk about ways to use them within workshops and resources they might need to be able to use these activities with their audiences. And then I have a speaker, Lindsay Jacks from Lights Out Baltimore, who does work with light pollution and wildlife. So she'll be presenting about that.
Carrie, your guest speaker, can you say what it is she's presenting on again? The audio was a little fuzzy there.
Sorry, she's from Lights Out Baltimore,
Okay.
which works with bird and bat strikes, particularly in buildings in Baltimore City. So she'll be talking about the effects of light pollution on wildlife to kind of go along with the new activity, Lights Out.
Great.
Okay, I think we have time for one more. Kim, you said you have some plans going on in Georgia. Do you want to tell us about that?
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Okay. So Amber and I are working on a plan that we hope to start in August with our next facilitator training and kind of launching it with that and highlighting different things and modeling some of the activities. And then we were hoping to set up about 3 or 4 visits to the different corners of the state where we could sit down with those. Being a new facilitator, I also want to get out and meet some of our facilitators because there's many I don't know and I've just talked to by email. So it's kind of a dual purpose when we get out, give them updates just about Project Wild in general, what we're doing, forms, but then at the same time use that opportunity to do some trainings and maybe model a couple of the new activities, but do more of a face-to-face so we can kind of build that relationship. Because a lot of them, they were trained by Rusty Garrison before us, so we're kind of rebuilding those relationships and hopefully getting people back on board. Mm-hmm. We've already started to get some facilitators back, so just another opportunity to find out what people are doing, what their needs are, and then show them what the new book has to offer through modeling the activities.
All right, thanks, Kim. I want to get back to a comment that Caitlin made about doing some online training like PLT. I'm not familiar with PLT's online training, so Caitlin, can you tell us a little bit more about what you're thinking or what you think would be helpful for you?
Caitlin, I just unmuted you, so I don't know if your microphone is on. Hello, Caitlin?
Oh, sorry, I had to step out for a second.
Okay, so yeah, so you're speaking to everybody now. I don't know if you had a chance to hear the question.
I see the typed question that says elaborate on the online training.
Yes, so I'm not familiar with the PLT training that they have, so if you could elaborate a little bit more on what you're thinking would be useful for you.
Sure, so PLT allows you to do the entire training workshop and get their curriculum through their online website. Well, obviously website is online. And so it's broken up into what they call courses, little modules, and you can take individual sections of a workshop and do it, and it's all guided for you to do as like an individual person. And what I found really helpful, there's a section of the PLT workshop that is a hike through the guide variation, and it's a little more involved than the traditional hikes through the guide that I've done in PLT or in Wild, where you just find things in the book, but you actually start to think about how you would use the sections of the book in order to plan an activity. And so in the last couple of PLT workshops that I've led, because I lead PLT and Wild, I've actually used the online coursal module for the hike through the guide particularly. And I find it really helpful because it's really comprehensive of the different components of the book. And then it's also, it really starts to guide you into thinking about how you're going to use the book to plan an activity, as opposed to just finding sections and leaving it kind of flat with just, did you find this? Did you find that? So less of a checklist and more of an engaged activity for the participants.
Okay.
And I also mentioned that I'm moving toward doing something with a social learning model. So I'm actually going to spend a lot of time in the next workshop that I'm doing having the participants plan a series of activities. So we have 30 people signed up, and it's a joint PLT and Project Wild workshop. And I'm going to facilitate them actually developing and then leading full activities or full sections of activities, similar to what we do in the workshops in general. So I won't really be leading any activities after the introductory piece of it. They're going to spend most of their time planning a unit and then executing that unit so that they lead the workshop fully beginning to end. I have a really good location. I'm in a park and I have a huge storage room full of supplies that they can draw from, and I have insects and all kinds of things in my nature center. So there's a lot of supplies and materials they can work with in order to plan and execute the activities.
Wow. All right. Thanks, Caitlin, for sharing that. And we will definitely look into the PLT training and see what we can do. I know that when PLT developed that, they put in a lot of time and effort into it, and funding. A lot of money went into that as well. I looked at it briefly, but I think it'd be worthwhile for us to take a look at that again. So I know.
Yeah, I definitely think it would be worth looking at. And then it also has its own funding stream tied back into it because they charge $40 per person to take the online workshop.
Mm-hmm.
So there is some return of funding for the program. And then it gives you access to the full online guide as well. So you don't get a printed guide in the mail, but you get an electronic version of the guide, access to that once you take the online workshop.
Okay. All right. Kiki, I know you had something. You had some ideas of how you're going to do that. And Emma, I'm afraid we're running a little bit short on time, but what we'll do is save this chat string and be able to share those ideas with everyone. So Mark, I'll turn it back to you.
Okay.
There's your slide, Elena.
There it is.
Yeah. And I think we can, as you mentioned, Elena, continue to talk about it. But one of those questions that we can come back to in part 2 of this, or that you can type into your chat window, is in regards to training your facilitators, how can we best use our time at the Project Wild Conference in Ohio? Is there something specific that we can plan for that will help coordinators better train facilitators? Okay, so I have homework for you all, and I'm going to open up the homework. You could think of it as more like a study group than homework. I'm going to be opening it up to all coordinators. There are some that weren't able to be in the discussion today. But I'm going to send you to this website. It's on Padlet, and it's basically a brief set of directions, some discussion items, and a list of about 10 activities that you can pick one and sign up for. And so when you put your name on one of these activities and your email address, then you can contact the others who have selected that activity. And I'm asking everybody to, as it says in the directions, and as you will see when you go to that site, this is just a screenshot image, but the directions are to join one of these groups, one of these 10 activity groups, and we want at least 3 people for each activity. You can have more than 3, that's fine. So join a group, read the activity, read the new version, that is the 2018 version. And if you don't have your complimentary copy yet, or you haven't ordered any guides and haven't received any yet, you should soon receive one in the mail. Read the new version, and then read the previous version as well and compare them. Number 3 in the directions is help your group choose a time to meet and discuss the activity. And the discussion items in the white rectangle here, those are things to help you get started and discuss. How has the activity changed? Were there any special materials needed? What's going on in the activity? Describe the activity. What are the learning objectives? And then also, there's a link to a document built into the directions there that will lead you to those In Step with STEM and WildWork resources. And so for whatever activity you choose, explore those and see what those are about. Then you pick a spokesperson who will briefly report back. So you want to pick someone who is able to attend on April 12th. And then just report back to everybody else how the activity has changed, and in your reflections on the activity, what you learned about that activity, what you learned about the STEM and wild work, and other additional resources that are online. A question came up about the next webinar, and it involves inviting others that are not Project Wild coordinators. And so now I'd like to ask you all the question, and I'd like you to type in your answers into the chat box. This webinar was specifically for Project Wild coordinators, but there are many facilitators who would like to attend. We do have limited space with our Zoom platform, with our subscription level. I think we can take 100 people. And right now we have 40, so we could probably take another 60 people. We would want to give priority to Project Wild coordinators, but would you like the webinar to be opened up to facilitators? And if there's a way we can do that, where we can prioritize access for Project Wild coordinators, we probably could, but you might prefer that the webinar be only Project Wild coordinators, and that we share ideas and thoughts that we just want among Project Wild coordinators. But if you would like to invite facilitators to also attend, let us know. So take a moment, if you haven't already, to type in your preference for the webinar on April 12th. Yes, I would like facilitators to be invited, or no, I would like the next webinar to be coordinators only. And again, that next webinar is on April 12th at 1:30 p.m. All right, we're closing in on this. We'll take questions and comments in a bit, but I did want to point out a few more things. And that is the new guide, as we assume there would be, there's going to be things that need to change. There were so many changes, so much new content, that inevitably there will be things that could have possibly been worded better or more accurately, or in some cases need to be completely fixed. And Kelly and I know of a few of those already. For example, a photo that will need to be, well, probably need to be swapped out, or an incorrect reference to a page number. As always, we want you to send us changes that are needed for the next printing. So we'll keep track of those carefully. We'll put them in our marked up copies, and the next time the guide is printed, we will start with those things that need to change, and then we'll go down the list and see what we can have time to do or we can afford to do for other kinds of changes. We're not anticipating any major revisions for a long while, but we do want all of your ideas, whether it's small edits or big ideas. There was, for example, recently the suggestion of changing the name to Project Wild Terrestrial to help distinguish it from aquatic. That was actually something that we put a lot of time and discussion into months and months ago about that possible change, and decided it would serve us better just to keep the terrestrial guide titled as is. It's just Project Wild. But if that's a change you'd like to see, let us know that too. All right, so now I'd like to turn it over to any comments and questions about any of the content today. If there's content you would like to see next time, in addition to reviewing some of the new content in each of those activities, let me know. I will be sending out more information about the discussion groups or the homework, as I said earlier. So stay tuned for that. You can access the documents that we used earlier online at the Coordinator's Corner, and I'll send out more information on those as well. All right, so with Kelly and Elena's help, I'll start fielding questions and comments.
So Caitlin asked if there will be a PowerPoint to introduce the new guide. So I'm thinking maybe we could combine the PowerPoints that we create for these trainings and then edit them so that they're a little more user-friendly if you're going through and not having somebody talk you through the slides. And we could share that on the Coordinator's Corner.
Okay, yes.
And Caitlin wanted to know about NGSS alignment.
Okay, so we are working on, or I am working on, NGSS alignment. In some senses, much of the work has been done, but for me now, the work is to sort through a lot of documents and check the work of others for what alignments were made or what correlations were made between NGSS and the new content, and then to publish an updated correlation of NGSS and Project Wild Terrestrial. So the answer is yes, but it's still a work in progress and will take some time to finish.
And I think most people, well, some people may know this, but the correlations for the terrestrial guide to the NGSS performance expectations are published on our website currently. That's to the that's to the 2017 list of activities, the 123. And so those are still relevant and pertinent for a lot of the activities that are going to be similar. But like Mark said, we need to create a document for the new guide. We did look at a lot of those correlations as we were editing the activities to see where stronger correlations could be made. And so like Mark said, we were tracking that as we were editing activities, but we just have to pull it all together. But I just wanted to point out that's a good starting place since a lot of the activities are the same. I'll post the link.
I see a comment from Hazel. How about considering the concept of experienced facilitators, those folks who have conducted 5 or more workshops? And Hazel, I see that's part of a long series of responses from other people. So we'll have to read through all of those in time and sort it out, but that's one we'll definitely consider when we're deciding whether to invite facilitators or not. And thank you for that suggestion. Okay, well, I hope I didn't miss any questions, but I think we're at the end, and I hope you all can join us on April 12th, and I hope you can join us in Ohio for an exciting Project Wild conference. So with that, I think we're ready to say goodbye, and thank you all for attending.
Thanks everybody for joining.
Bye, thank you.